The summer games are finally here, and to celebrate, FanDuel Sportsbook is hooking new users up with an epic summer games bonus. New users get up to $1,000 back in site credit if your first bet doesn't win. That's right. Just place your first bet on any summer games sport risk-free. Promotions like this are just one of the reasons why I love betting with FanDuel Sportsbook. Their app is simple to use with unique fun bet types such as same-game parlays and exclusive always-on promotions that let you get more action out of every game day. So new users, download the FanDuel Sportsbook app today and sign up with the promo code Hennig to get up to $1,000 back in site credit if your first bet doesn't win. Again, that's promo code Hennig to go for the gold today with FanDuel Sportsbook. Must be 21 or older, play in present NJRPA. First online real money wager only for risk-free bet refund issued non-withdrawable site credit that expires in 7 days. Restrictions apply. See sportsbook.fanduel.com for details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
South Jersey's play-by-play home for the Eagles,
touchdown!
Sixers,
and
Flyers.
He scored!
97.3 ESPN, WENJ, WENJ HD Millville, Atlantic City, a Town Square media station. This is Sports Bash Saturday with Josh Hennig, live from the Matt Blatt Kia Studios. Now, Sports Bash Saturday. Here's Josh Hennig.
Sports Bash Saturday, Josh Hennig in your Saturday afternoon. Glad to have you guys on board the show today on 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. We are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. As always, you can join the conversation. Text board is open, 609-403-0973. Also get messages through the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. It's free, thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. And, of course, you can join the stream. Comment on there as well at 973. Give us a follow on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Busy show still to go. Of course, the Phillies after the deadline. We'll talk about that. The Eagles' first week of training camp. Plus, we got to talk about the Sixers' lack of activity on draft night as we get ready for NBA free agency, which is coming up next week. Bryan Toporek from Forbes Sports NBA writer. He is also the co-host of the NBA podcast. You hear him throughout the week with me on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. He'll join us coming up at 1:20. Also, it is Olympic season, and who would better talk to about a champion's mindset than someone who won not one but 2 golds in the Olympics for the United States. Yes, 2 different Olympics she won. Kayla Harrison, she's defending PFL MMA champion. We'll get a deeper dive into her mindset and what goes on in her mind when it comes to the Olympics. All that is still to come right here on 97.3 ESPN. But we got to start with the Eagles and the Phillies because this is the first week of the Nick Sirianni era in Philadelphia. So this is a huge, huge week for these guys because this is the first time that these athletes in the NFL are going to be dealing with Nick Sirianni. And in Nick Sirianni's first week was the most important thing that could have happened. Nick Sirianni did 2 things this week that are absolutely important for this team to move forward. The number one thing that Nick Sirianni did today, well, this week I should say, is he talked about how he set the tone for what he wants the guys to do. He wants them to attack. He wants them to focus on the fundamentals. He wants them to have energy. He wants them to go out there and take control of their own destiny. And he followed up those comments from earlier in the week by stopping practice at one point this week for an hour to sit everybody down and say, this is unacceptable. We cannot practice like this. We'll never be better as a football team if we don't do X, Y, Z. Nick Sirianni is trying to change the culture that had degraded here in Philadelphia in recent years. With all the people who left Doug Peterson's staff, with all the injuries that happened in recent years, with all the veterans who were part of that championship team who are no longer here, the environment changed. And I think it's fair to say that Doug Peterson lost his touch with the team last year. So now that we are in a new era, Nick Sirianni is not going to put up with whatever Doug Peterson was putting up with last year. So guess what? You have a situation where now the Eagles have a coach who's going to demand more of them, who's going to expect more from them, who's going to want more from them. And all of his coaches are doing the same. You have a situation now where you have a coach who's going to demand more of these players, and I'm loving it. And I think this team is not going to lose as many games as they did last year. I'm not promising you they're a playoff team, but this Eagles team will be better because the coaches are going to demand it, because the roster is better. And you have to wonder, thinking about the last few years, how many of those blown draft picks, how many of those players didn't work out on the field, how much of that was the front office, and how much of it was the coaching? We are going to find out this year, because you didn't bring in a head coach who had a coordinator, quarterback coach, and wide receiver coach background without a reason. You didn't bring in an offensive coordinator who had worked with multiple quarterbacks as an OC with the Chargers. You didn't bring in Petula and Sirianni and Steichen for no reason. And on the defense, you brought in a guy who is going to implement a completely different defense than the city of Philadelphia has seen over the last 10 years. Between Jim Schwartz, Billy Davis, and the Juan Castillo failed experiment, you are not going to see any of those defenses. This is a completely different defense. You didn't bring in, again, these coaches unless you had a reason. And I genuinely believe that this team will be better because the environment will be different. Josh Hennig here, Sports Bash Saturday, 97.3 ESPN FM. Text board is open as always, 609-403-0973 to get on the conversation, 609-403-0973. Also, you can chime in to the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. You can download it for free. Thanks to First Bank of Seattle City for your Phillies, Eagles, Sixers, Flyers, and South Jersey high school sports coverage on 97.3 ESPN.com and the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. The other thing to take away from this week is look at the players who are performing on the field. First of all, there's a lot of reports that Darius Slay has looked great in training camp. And I bring up Slay because Slay has been going mano-a-mano with Eagles rookie Devonta Smith on a lot of situations. This is what Smith told the media this week about Devonta Smith. Quote, he learns a lot, man. He always has a plan. For him to be that young and the way he understands the game, that's good for him and the Eagles. So you have a guy who's been around the league for almost a decade telling you that your rookie wide receiver is basically making him work. You have a rookie wide receiver who's learning from, a top 15 corner in the NFL, a top 12 corner in the NFL? So for Slay to be teaching Devonta Smith and to be working with him as much as he is, that's huge. Because now when Devonta Smith goes into the regular season, he's already had an entire month of going up against NFL caliber corners. And listen, no offense to Alabama. They're national champs for a reason. But it's a different speed and it's a different mentality from college to the NFL. And listen, you may have gone against Patrick Surtain II in practice at Bama, but he's not Darius Slay. He doesn't have that veteran wisdom. He doesn't have that veteran experience. And if Devonta Smith is going to be successful this year, it's going to be in part because Darius Slay forced him to be great. And it seems like Devonta Smith is up for the task. And I love that. I love the fact that iron sharpens iron. That these guys are going out there and making each other better. So like I said, I expect the Eagles to be better than last year. I'm not promising you a playoff team, but I think all signs point from the first week of training camp that this team is going to be different. And by the way, don't forget, we have 3 preseason games this year. We hear them all right here on 97.3 ESPN FM. You're not going to have like it has been in past this last year. Remember, no offseason, no preseason games last year. So this year will actually be a full development year for these guys. Remember last year? Nothing for guys like Davion Taylor, Jalen Reagor, Jalen Hurts. They didn't have a real offseason last year. This year, they're on the field. And by the way, how about Jalen Hurts? So Jalen Hurts has been working out this offseason with his offensive linemen. Him, Lane Johnson, Jason Kelsey, they're all working out together. How many quarterbacks work out with their offensive linemen? You know how crazy that is? And there's literally a mural in Lane Johnson's gym of him and all of his workout partners behind Jalen Hurts. And it says, we are in this together. For the offensive lineman to buy into the quarterback like that, I don't care who you are. I don't care what you think of Jalen Hurts. You have to respect his leadership and the fact that guys are buying into him and his work ethic. In fact, I was reading the account from ESPN.com this week about how apparently Jalen Hurts, in between sets in the gym, is working on his play calling and his play memorization. So he's sitting there in between sets calling out plays and going through his memorization and memory recall of the playbook. How many quarterbacks actually do that? I don't know, but that's pretty awesome to me. And by the way, Jalen Hurts deadlifts and squats over 500 pounds. So you don't just have some skinny quarterback back there like the Jets do with Zach Wilson, who's some pretty boy. You have a man back there playing quarterback who the offensive line respects. And the offensive line respects him. They're going to block for him. Offensive linemen, how many times you hear about, the quarterback bought the offensive line dinner, or they bought them golf carts, or they bought them Rolexes or whatever. Jalen Hurts went the next level. He went to Lane Johnson and said, I want to work out with you. He's already earned his stripes with those O-linemen. So now, you know what's going to happen? On 3rd and 10, when you got to get those 10 yards, and you're going up against the Washington defense with Chase Young and Montez Sweat and Jonathan Allen and all of those monsters on the Washington defense, the offensive line is going to do? They're going to crack their knuckles. They're going to dig in their heels, and they're going to say, we're not letting anybody touch our quarterback. I don't care who's across from me, because that guy's earned our respect. I didn't hear anything like that about Carson Wentz. I didn't hear anything like that about Sam Bradford. I didn't hear anything like that about a lot of quarterbacks in this city over the last 2 decades. But you know who we're hearing about? We're hearing it about Jalen Hurts. You could argue that if Nick Foles is the most beloved player in this city of the last 20 years, Jalen Hurts might be the most respected, because his work ethic and his investment this offseason has earned him that respect. And that's something in and of itself to get excited about. Oh, and by the way, Carson Wentz is not going to play this preseason. That's been confirmed. Because, Carson Wentz got injured again. For all the people who were wondering, did we have to trade Carson Wentz? Yeah, you did. Because you traded him before he got injured again. He got injured in practice. What imbecile hurts his foot in practice? He's seeing a foot specialist, Dr. Robert Anderson, with scans because there is potential damage to a bone and a ligament in his foot. I mean, what is wrong? Did you wear the wrong cleats? Someone step on your foot? Did you accidentally kick something? Did your dog run over your foot? What happened? I mean, Carson Wentz has got to be one of the most ridiculous players in NFL history. He gets traded to a new team, and 2 days in the camp, he hurts his foot. And now he's not going to play the rest of the preseason, according to Mike Garafolo and Mike Silver of the NFL Network. And according to Adam Schefter, Dr. Robert Anderson is evaluating Carson Wentz's foot scans to determine what kind of surgery he needs. And depending on the surgery that he needs, will determine how much time he's going to miss. Well, at least we know one thing. The Eagles avoided that problem. Josh Hennig here on Sports Batch Saturday on 97.3 ESPN. We are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. You can watch the show, join the conversation. Just follow at 973 ESPN. Text board is open as always, 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. Of course, you can chime in through the 973 ESPN mobile app, powered by First Bank of Sea Isle City. Still to come, two-time Olympic champion Kayla Harrison at 2:40 p.m. Also, Forbes Sports NBA writer Bryan Toporek at 1:20. And we got to talk about the Phillies as well. Hey, the Phillies made not one but two trades before the deadline. Does it even matter? They lost the game last night. But I'll tell you coming up next why last night's loss justifies that trade that we saw yesterday. That's coming up here with Josh Hennig here on Sports Bash Saturday. At Josh Hennig on Twitter. This is 97.3 ESPN.
South Jersey's sports station, 97.3 ESPN. Wake up weekday morning 6 to 10 with Keyshawn, Jay, Will, and Zubin. Followed by Greeny with Mike Greenberg from 10 till noon. At noon, it's Bart and Hahn. Then from 2 to 6 p.m., it's South Jersey's #1 rated sports talk show, The Sports Bash with Mike Gill. And from 6 to 7, Josh Hennig hosts Game Night. Plus, 97.3 ESPN is your exclusive play-by-play home for Philadelphia Eagles, Sixers, and Flyers, the NBA playoffs and finals, Major League Baseball, and the World Series, the NFL Draft, Monday, Thursday, and Sunday Night Football, the NFL playoffs, and Super Bowl 56. We are South Jersey's sports leader. 97.3 ESPN. And listen anywhere with the free mobile app.
season is about to kick off, and that means it's time to list your football future bets on PropSwap. Did you know before the season started last year, the Buccaneers were 60-1 to win it all? Now that's a futures bet. You just never know what can happen. Or hey, maybe you do. Sports bettors cash in early and often when they list long shots on PropSwap. The average monthly seller makes $500 a month on PropSwap just posting and selling tickets. So join them by going to PropSwap.com or download the PropSwap app today. PropSwap, where America buys and sells sports bets.
It's summer in the Garden State. Now's the time to get sweet Jersey fresh peaches and nectarines. I'm New Jersey Secretary of Agriculture Doug Fisher reminding you to enjoy these Jersey fresh gems. Find Jersey fresh peaches today at your favorite market. Stay loyal to local Jersey Fresh.
This is Sports Bash Saturday with Josh Hennig, live from the Matt Blatt Kia Studios. Here's Josh Hennig.
Josh Hennig back here on Sports Bash Saturday, 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. As always, we're live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. You can join the conversation. Text board is open, 609-403-0973. That's 609-403-0973. Also, you can send a message through the 97.3 ESPN mobile app, powered by First Bank of Sea Isle City. And, of course, we are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter in the Matt Blatt Kia Studios. Just follow 973 ESPN on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. I'll get to my thoughts on the Phillies in just a moment, but a couple texts that came in about the Eagles. First to get to. One message says, Carson Wentz is the NFC's version of Andrew Luck, never available. The problem with the Andrew Luck comparison is Andrew Luck led a team to the AFC Championship game. Carson Wentz was injured before his team made a playoff run. And the second time they made the playoffs with him, he got injured in an illegal hit that should have been called but wasn't called early in the Seahawks game. So Andrew Luck at least played in playoff games. I got to double check, but I think Andrew Luck at least won 2 playoff games. That's 2 more than Carson Wentz ever even did. Let me just double check. I want to make sure I got that number right, but I'm pretty sure that Luck won at least 2 playoff games. Let me see here really quick. Playoff. I'm trying to find his playoff numbers here. But I genuinely think that I get the sentiment, but I think that you got to actually say that Luck is better than Carson Wentz. That Luck had a better career. That Luck did more with his career than Carson did. I think that's a big thing to factor in. Let's go to his postseason log. Here it is. Yeah, Luck won. So Andrew Luck went 4-4 in the postseason. So Carson Wentz literally started 1 playoff game. Luck started 8. Luck won more playoff games than Carson Wentz even played in. So while I understand the comparison, you could argue that Luck had a much better career overall than Carson Wentz did. I mean, Andrew Luck is a guy who was a 4-time Pro Bowler. He's comeback player of the year. He won 4 playoff games. He got a team to the AFC Championship game. So, yeah, he suffered a lot of injuries, but I would say he definitely has a better career than Carson Wentz does. So, maybe Wentz is closer to maybe somebody else in terms of injury stuff, but I think Luck isn't the best example because I think Luck was just a better quarterback. Another message came in from Dan from EHT. Dan wrote a very long text. I'm not going to read the whole thing, Dan EHT. I'm going to just get to the bullet points here. Dan says, I don't understand what you're thinking, Josh. Doug Peterson was a Super Bowl winning coach, scored for the championship winning coordinator. How is an unproven head coach with a completely new staff and the same talent going to be successful? Different is great, but not necessarily better. Well, here's the reason why I say that. Number one, it's not all the same talent. You added Steve Nelson and Anthony Harris to a secondary that was desperately needing those players last year. Eric Wilson changes a linebacker group that, frankly, was an embarrassment last year. I mean, I think we all saw Nate Gary get chewed out by the Rams for 3 touchdowns last year. Nate Gary's not even on the team anymore. And the defensive line is arguably improved over last year as well, with the additions of Kerrigan, with the drafting of Milton Williams, with the addition of those guys to that line, gives you some more depth. So on the defense alone, it's actually not the same talent. It's a better group of talent. Offensively, it's obviously debatable because you subtracted guys like Alshon Jeffrey, but you added a rookie like Devonta Smith. So is that 100% an improvement or not? We're going to find out. The running back situation is going to be interesting because who backs up Miles Sanders? We don't know yet. How is that going to play out? You drafted Gainwell, you brought in Kerryon Johnson to compete with Jordan Howard for the backup roles. So it's not all the same talents. I think that's a mischaracterization by you, Danny HT. But listen, I understand what you're saying, that you're going from a Super Bowl winning coach to an unproven guy. But I think it was obvious last year that things went sideways. And as I said, the players who got drafted, Howie Roseman had a very interesting comment a few months ago. I'm going to try to find it really quick. So if I can't find it, I'll try to find it later in the show. But Howie Roseman made a comment about the talent on this team that spoke to me about what their perspective is on the coaching staff. Here it is. This was Howie Roseman back in April. Take a listen.
Yeah, we learned a lot about the process last year. Obviously unique the first time that we're doing all of these on Zoom, and there are a lot of lessons learned. And I think where we are right now is just excited about the teamwork that we had throughout this process with the coaches, with the scouts, with our front office, and move for there to make sure that we have a tremendous draft this year. The book hasn't been written on last year's draft either. So excited for those guys to get with Coach and his staff.
Hear that last part? The book hasn't been written yet, and I'm excited for those guys to get with this coaching staff. Listen, that is a shot, even if it's a small one, at the previous coaching staff. There's a lot of people who cover this team on a daily basis who have said that they wondered if Doug Peterson and his staff were good enough at developing young players, and that they were better off with veterans. And there's speculation out there that if Alshon Jeffrey played last year only because Doug Peterson trusted him more than Travis Fulgham, when Travis Fulgham should have stayed in the lineup, and that he kept running back to the veterans because that's Doug Peterson is comfortable with. So, Danny HC, I understand that Doug Peterson won a championship, but when you draft players, you got to develop them too. And a lot of people have said, who were around Eagles camp, that Doug Peterson was such a player's coach. He didn't hold people accountable. He didn't police the locker room. He left it to the players to police it. And when you lost veterans like Malcolm Jenkins and Chris Long, the locker room is no longer being policed. And that the coaches were not holding the players accountable to show up to meetings on time and to have good practice habits. And when Nick Sirianni came in here and said, I want fundamentals, I want aggressiveness, I want to attack practices. And he said, listen, this practice is unacceptable. From what the reports were, Doug Peterson was much more laid back. And yes, Jim Schwartz won a championship. But there's speculation that he was stubborn and that he was hard-headed and that he had his way of doing things and he didn't want any other way of doing it. And that he was unhappy with some of the Eagles' additions over the last couple of years because he wanted them to draft and select certain players that they didn't. And for Schwartz, I think that was part of the reason why he left Philadelphia on his own volition, because he said, look, when I first got here for 2016, 2017, 2018, you brought in guys that were aligned with my philosophy and that were guys that I wanted here. But for 2019 and 2020, you didn't do that. And listen, if the coach isn't happy with the talent you're handing him, if he's not going to be able to use them properly, there's a reason why he's not here anymore. And it's been widely reported that Doug Peterson's vision for the team moving forward did not line up with the owner's philosophy. And a lot of people in the Eagles building did not like the fact that Doug Peterson insisted on Mike Groh staying on as offensive coordinator, or insisting on Press Taylor having an expanded role, or fill in the blank situation. people were not happy about it. And Doug Peterson was potentially loyal to a fault. So for as important as great he was at leading this team to win a Super Bowl championship, he was unable to continue that because of certain things that were unseen about this team and the organization. So the reason why I'm saying that the unproven head coach with the new staff can be successful is because sometimes you got to shake things up and put a different voice in there who's going to develop the players in front of you. And for all intents and purposes, it seems like Doug Peterson was not interested in developing talent. He wanted to be handed ready-made pieces. And the only talent he was interested in investing his time in were quarterbacks. And he wanted to call plays. And you know what? I think the best thing for Doug Peterson moving forward is, I think after he's done taking this year off from football to recalibrate himself, I think Doug needs to go somewhere and be an offense coordinator. I think he needs to get the coordinator bug out of his system. He needs to get his Doug Peterson said himself how much he loved play calling. He said it multiple times to the media. He was passionate about it. He loved playing calling. Well, Doug, if that's how you feel, if you are that insistent on being a play caller, then maybe Doug needs to have a few years just as a play caller before he gets a head coaching job. He needs to get it out of his system. He needs to flesh that out because you know what? If you're going to focus more on play calling than you are on coaching the football team and running the football team, then that's a problem. So Nick Sirianni seems to be more interested in being a head coach and developing the players and coaching up his coaches and coaching up his players than he is about play calling right now. Now, if that changes, I'll complain about it. And listen, I understand that there's speculation that, look, there are players on this Eagles team that are past their prime. But frankly, I can find a hole in every team in the NFC East. For every complaint you have about the Eagles, I can find a complaint for the other teams. The Giants have an unproven offensive line and a quarterback that, frankly, is still suspect. Washington has a suspect offensive line. And if Washington does a flaw on their defense, it is their secondary. Their front seven is elite, but their back four, questionable. The Cowboys, you drafted a lot of defensive players. That's a lot of young players who have to learn how to play the game. You didn't add enough veterans, in my opinion, and we don't know what Dan Quinn's defense is going to look like. And by the way, talk about guys past or in their prime, what's going on with Elliott? Remember, when Ezekiel Elliott had that elite offensive line in front of him, of all those Pro Bowlers, all those All-Pros, he was dominating the league. He was leading the league in rushing, and he was going out there and leading the league in yards per game and rushing yards and attempts. Last 2 years, not so much. The last 2 years, he hasn't been as effective. So was Ezekiel Elliott's elite play his first 3 years in the league a byproduct of a great offensive line or of a great running back? We're going to find out this year because the Cowboys have had to recalibrate the offensive line, and Tyron Smith has been injured pretty much every single year, it seems like. Travis Frederick is long go. He's gone. He's not walking through that door ever again. Zach Martin has been injured multiple times in the last few years. So for the Cowboys, I don't know what we're getting this year. So for every complaint you have about the Eagles, I can find a complaint about the other teams in the NFC East. I think there's an attitude that the Eagles are worse off than the other teams in the division because we hyper-analyze the Eagles more than the rest of the teams. We hyper-focus on them. We know their flaws better than anyone else. Well, guess what? When Hard Knocks comes out, when we see the Cowboys and their training camp, you're going to see what's really going on in Dallas to an extent. Because obviously they edit some of the footage for entertainment purposes. But remember, Hard Knocks shows a lot of flaws. We saw the flaws with Jeff Fisher, with the Rams. We saw the flaws with the Browns, with Hugh Jackson and his situation over there in Cleveland, every year we see flaws with these teams. And we're going to find out the flaws in Dallas very quickly. You know, Dallas has been the favorite in Vegas 10 times to win the division. They've only won the division one of those 10 times. We'll get into more Phillies a little bit later in the show. I got some thoughts on the Phillies coming off the deadline and their pitching staff moving forward. But coming up next, it's Olympic season. So we were talking with a 2-time Olympic gold medalist and find out from her what it takes to win in the Olympics, what it means to be a champion. Kayla Harrison, the defending PFL Women's Lightweight Champion, joins us next right here on 97.3 ESPN FM, 97.3 ESPN mobile app. We're live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, where you can join the conversation. And, of course, 97.3 ESPN mobile app. It's free thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. Send messages through there. Get alerts on all the Phillies, Eagles, Sixers, and Flyers news right there with the 97.3 ESPN mobile app.
This weekend on Major League Baseball on ESPN Radio. The fight for the top of the AL East continues when the Red Sox head to Tropicana Field to face the Rays.
Gone! Right on cue in opposite field. 3-run homer for Brandon Lau.
The Red Sox and Rays. Coverage begins today at 5:30 Eastern and tomorrow at 6 Eastern. Listen to Major League Baseball on 97.3 ESPN.
No matter the mileage, no matter the make, no matter what you owe, Matt Kia wants your vehicle today. Even if you don't want to buy a new car from us, we need to replenish our inventory, so we need your vehicle, no matter the situation. Stuck in a loan or lease, Matt Kia wants to get you released. Get cash for your car today, even if you don't buy a car from us. However, if you are looking for a new ride, take advantage of New Jersey Charge Up Incentive Program. Get $10,000 off on all brand new 2020 Nero EV, all 2021 Kia Souls, $1,500 cash back, or pay 0 interest for 60 months on every Kia Sportage, Forte, and Stinger.
It's gotta be a Matt Black Kia.
Offers with approved Tier 1 or 2 credit through Kia Motors Finance. Not all will qualify. 0% based on 1667 per 1,000 borrowed. Negative equity financed into new loan. Call 877-289-6670 or go to mattblackkianj.com for complete details. Expires 8/6/2021.
Matt Black Kia, 6211 Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township.
And now on Route 37 in Toms River.
Flounder season is gearing up, and the one stop for everything you need is the bait and tackle shop at Utch's Marina in historic Cape May. Come to Utch's for a huge selection of spinning and conventional rods and combos for the boat or the surf, with top name brands available like Penn, Tsunami, Ocean Max, Shimano, and more. Utch's Marina, your home away from home at the foot of the bridge in Cape May. Stop by any day or visit CapeMayHarbor.com.
This is Sports Bash Saturday with Josh Hennig, live from the Matt Blatt Kia Studios. Here's Josh Hennig.
Josh Hennig here on 97.3 ESPN. And, of course, the PFL playoffs are just around the corner as August comes up. And, of course, we got the defending, the queen herself, PFL Women's Lightweight Champion, Kayla Harrison, joining us here on 97.3 ESPN. Kayla, how you doing this summer?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me back on.
I appreciate you jumping on. And the last time we talked, you were defending again, you were fighting in Atlantic City, and now you've, as we expected, to be in the playoffs. So, what is your mindset now that, okay, I'm another step toward the ultimate goal? Like, it is, how does that mindset go? Explain to the audience a little bit.
Yeah, the mindset stays the same. I have something to prove. I have to go out there. I have to win this next fight, and then the fight after that. There's one more checked off the list, and I'm just, everything stays the same. I keep training hard. I keep staying ready and preparing for Jenna, but ultimately preparing to be the best in the world,
And those are two different things, right? It's two different aspects of that checklist, right? It's you're preparing for your next opponent, but you're also not just trying to be the best version of yourself, quote unquote. It's trying to be the best in the world, which you can be.
Yes, exactly. I think that, I have to fight whoever's in front of me. I have to take those steps and check those boxes. But ultimately, I feel my biggest competition is myself. And as long as I do everything right, I stay the course. I stay humble. I stay hungry. I keep training hard. I think that time will tell and time will show that I have what it takes to be the best in the world. That's the goal. On my worst day, not just one time, not just, the stars align. I want to be so good that on my worst day, if I have 105 fever, I'm still the best in the world. I can still go out there and beat up anybody.
It's funny you said that because we were just talking this week, earlier on the week, about the Jordan flu game, about how Jordan goes out there, he's got the flu, he still has this amazing game. And that's, to me, the difference between the athlete who shows up to get a paycheck and the athlete who shows up because they desire greatness, is that it doesn't matter what's going on that day. In your mind, it's, I need to be the best version of myself no matter what the environment is.
Yep, exactly. And that's, that's been my mentality and that's been my mindset from a very young age. I don't remember ever being satisfied with mediocrity or satisfied with second or third or I did okay. I want to go out and I want to dominate and I want to instill my will. And I'm, to be quite frank, I'm not sure that's something that can be taught. I think that that's just an internal thing. And I do want to be the Jordan. I wanted to be the Jordan of judo. I want to be the Jordan of MMA. That's what I aim for. That's the level of success that I desire. And people always get so this causes a lot of stir, right? Everyone always gets oh, you're not Valentina, you're not Amanda, you're not Rose, you're not Cyborg, you're not. And I'm like, yeah, that's fine, but it's my personal. This is my personal goal for myself. This is my personal confidence, my belief in myself. Who are you to say what I just what my goals should or shouldn't be? I don't tell you that you shouldn't want to be the best, janitor, whoever it is that's talking crap about me. I'm not going to get there. I get that that's part of being a public persona, but it always gives me a little chuckle when people say how dare you want to be great? What?
But that isn't that part of the issue. The issue is that's what, as I said, separates. What separates people like you from the people who can never do what you do is the fact that you believe and you strive for that greatness, whereas other people, let's be realistic, they're trying to bring you down to their level because they know they can never reach where you want to be and where you are and where you want to go. And to me, that's what separates someone like yourself who goes to the Olympics, dominates in judo, comes out to MMA undefeated, is that it's all mentality, it's all desire, it's all drive. And guess what? The people who say that stuff, they're saying it because guess what? They could never do what you do.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess this is my problem with the world and with society. Is like, I don't believe that based on my life and based on my history and based on everything I've been through, everything I've seen, I don't believe that people aren't capable of greatness. You know, I don't believe in settling for the job that you don't like. I don't believe in being in a relationship you're not happy in. I don't believe in just going through the motions. And you're right. Like, I can't comprehend the way some people think. And I dare you to try to be great. You know, I dare you to live fearlessly. I dare you to be bold, because everyone has something that they're meant to do. Everyone has a purpose in life. Everyone has a goal or a dream or anything. And if you're so busy telling me that my goal is insane, then you're obviously not focused enough on yours. And you should be, because you deserve to go after what you want in life. I believe that that's everyone's right. I believe it's everyone's destiny. You deserve to be happy and to chase what makes you happy. Not even happy, but what brings you joy and peace. You know, that's my mentality. And I think that, I understand misery loves company, but maybe I just keep being a light and chasing my dreams and encouraging others to chase their dreams, and I'll change the world a little bit.
Kayla Harris, the women's defending lightweight champion of the PFL, joining us here on 97.3 ESPN. Again, the PFL postseason starts August 13th and the 19th, 27th. Kayla fights on August 19th. You can watch it on ESPN, not ESPN Plus. ESPN is where you can catch Kayla fighting in the postseason next month. Now, Kayla, obviously, one of the reasons why we're having this conversation is because you're doing more than just preparing for the playoffs. You're also trying to raise awareness and raise money for the Surfside Hardship Fund and the Shul of Bal Harbor Central Emergency Fund to help with the tragedy in Miami. So talk to the audience a little bit about why this is important to you and what they can do to get involved.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I found out about the building collapse while I was actually at my fight in Atlantic City, my last fight. And it sort of sat with me. It sat heavy with me. You know, I remember being in Boston during the Boston Marathon bombing, and the fear that I had and not knowing if my loved ones were safe and not knowing if my friends were okay, and the panic that set in. And obviously it wasn't a terrorist attack, but the aftermath of a tragedy, you know, the victims and the survivors and the missing people, that fear, it sat with me, and I was feeling a lot of empathy for the people who were going through that. And so I decided to say something after my fight. And I also really believe that charity starts at home, you know, and I live in Florida now. I'm based in South Florida. It's not far from where I live. It's not far from where my kids live and play. And, I think that it's important that we lift these people up and we do our communal duty to help them in this time of need. So I'm making a donation. The PFL already made a $10,000 donation on my behalf. There's also a link on my foundation's website, which is fearlessfoundation.org. If you click donate, and you can go to from now until my fight on August 19th, anything that's donated will go directly to those two organizations.
And again, for people in our area, for example, they went through Hurricane Sandy years ago. So they're very well aware of how, something that's completely out of anyone's control can totally devastate somebody's life. So, to me, this is an important message to bring to people in South Jersey, because they know all too well what it's like to see something like that happen, and there's nothing they could have done to prevent it.
Yep, for sure. And I think it's, there are so many, I don't know, it kind of just like hits home for me a little bit, like you don't expect something like this to happen in the US. You don't expect something like this to happen right down the street from you. So for me, it's important that I give back to my community and I do my part. And as an athlete, as a role model, as an entertainer, as someone who's in the spotlight, it's my job. It's my duty. It's my responsibility to make sure that I use this platform in a positive way.
Again, it's the Surfside Hardship Fund and the Shul of Bal Harbor Center Emergency Fund. Tell the folks again where they can go to get involved.
Yep. So you can go directly. So you can donate directly to them. But there's also a link on my foundation's website, which is fearlessfoundation.org. If you click donate right there, anything that's donated from the time of my last fight until the time of this next fight on August 19th, all of those funds are going to go directly to those two organizations.
And again, the date of Kayla's next fight is August 19th. You can watch it on ESPN Plus, the PFL postseason 2021 edition. The women's lightweight champion defending, joining us here on 97.3 ESPN. We mentioned the Olympics a little bit. I got to ask you, as you see the Olympics going on, is there any fond memories that you're having watching these young ladies go out there? Is there a part of you that's almost like, I remember what that was like? Any of those kind of things going on for you?
For sure. I think that, it is always going to hold a special place in my heart. I had two great experiences at the Olympics, not only winning America's first gold, then defending, but just the journey to get there, the people who are part of that journey, my teammates, my coaches, my training partners, my doctors and physical therapists, and all the people you meet and all of the places you go. For sure, I have really fond memories of the Olympics, and it's been exciting to watch and see the next generation kind of rise up to the occasion. It's obviously have been a very tumultuous road to get there. And these athletes have been through a lot, but I'm proud of them. I'm proud of the resilience of athletes. And I think that, it just speaks volumes about the Olympic movement. It's something that even in times of war, even in times of a global pandemic, we can still all come together and cheer on the best in the world at what they do. One of my favorite things about the Olympics, and something I try to remember, is it's not the motto, which is Citius Audius Fortius, which means faster, higher, stronger. It doesn't mean fastest. It doesn't mean highest. It doesn't mean strongest. It's all about going out there and being your absolute best and being the best possible version of yourself. And those are mottos and ideals that I live by to this day.
Yeah. The other thing that's interesting to me is that, in the Olympics, you were in two completely different cities that you competed in. And so the other part for these athletes is it's not like, they're staying in their country to compete. They're literally going somewhere else to compete. So it's like, that's a whole nother level of like having to focus and regather yourself. And on top of, oh, by the way, we're still dealing with what we are with this COVID-19 stuff and everything. It's like, it's just so many things going on that it always fascinated me about how, like, for someone like you, you're going to a different country, a different part of the world, and you got to stay focused. It's just so much going on for an Olympic athlete to have that kind of success.
Yeah, for sure. A lot goes into play. I think that it's definitely the biggest stage in the world and one of the toughest. The Olympics have them so much prestige because it is so difficult to get there. It is so difficult to rise to the top. And there is a lot that goes into it, a lot of sacrifice, a lot of years behind the scenes, a lot of people behind the scenes. It takes a village to raise an Olympian. And I think that that's what makes it so special. You don't do it to be famous. You don't do it for money. You don't do it really for anything other than, the pursuit of excellence.
She is Kayla Harrison, the defending women's lightweight champion. You can follow her on Twitter at Kayla H. Of course, the website is KaylaHarrison.com. And of course, everything that people donate through her next fight, which is August 19th, she'll be giving to the relief efforts for Surfside Hardship Fund and the Shul of Bal Harbor Central Emergency Fund to help the folks who have suffered greatly down there in the Miami area. Because at the end of the day, some things, like you said, charity starts at home, and you got to help the people in your own community before you worry about anybody else. So, Kayla, this is great stuff. I appreciate you jumping on. I always enjoy talking to you because I feel like there's something that you say in every conversation that's like going to uplift somebody. And that's one of my favorite things is that, like you said, you've talked about before, you and I talked about, you want to inspire people. You want to help people. And to me, that's a greater calling than just being a great fighter, is that you're doing something with that platform. And that to me is what the biggest, most awesome thing is.
Absolutely. I think that, punching people in the face and wanting to be the best at it is really cool. And I get a lot of enjoyment personally out of it. But bigger than that, bigger than anything is the lasting legacy that I leave behind. And I think that starts with my kids. I think that starts with, how I choose to carry myself as a human being, as a person, as a champion. And I think that it's how I use my platform, whether I use it for selfish gains and whether I use it to make a lot of money and do all this and be famous and party and that, or I can inspire people. I can inspire a generation. I can change the world. I can help put an end to child sexual abuse. I can help my community. These things are what matter to me. And that's how I want to be remembered.
And of course, people can watch you as you are on your journey to being the greatest woman fighter of all time. August 19th, PFL postseason. People can watch you on ESPN television. And Kayla Harrison joined us here on 97.3 ESPN. Kayla, thanks again for jumping on. Enjoy the fight camp and keep being great.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. We'll talk soon.
Great stuff there from Kayla. Again, I told you guys on Billy Schreinem's locker room that, she's going to say something that's going to inspire somebody. I mean, she's talking about being the best version of yourself and, don't listen to what other people think or say about you. Like, just great stuff from Kayla there joining us. And again, don't forget about donating to help the people in Miami from the building collapses, the natural disasters down there that she's donating all those funds to. She's going out of her way, as well as the PFL, to help people who have suffered. So it's great to see that. Coming up next, we'll get more into the Eagles and the Phillies. Deadline passed, Phillies lost. What does it mean? As I promised you guys, when the Phillies lost, it proved last night the deal had to get done. I'll explain to you more about that coming up here. Josh Hennig, Sports Bash Saturday, 97.3 ESPN FM, 97.3 ESPN mobile app.
Health Update with Robin Stoloff, brought to you by Comfort Keepers, all the comforts of home.
Got it.
two-hand jam.
97.3 ESPN, WENJ, WENJ HD Millville, Atlantic City, a Town Square media station. This is Sports Bash Saturday with Josh Hennig, live from the Matt Blatt Kia Studios. Now, Sports Bash Saturday. Here's Josh Hennig.
Second hour of the show, Sports Bash Saturday, 97.3 ESPN FM, 97.3 ESPN mobile app. We are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. You can watch the show, join the conversation. We are live in the Matt Blatt Kia Studios. Don't forget, we'll be talking Sixers and NBA coming up at 1:20 p.m. with Forbes Sports NBA writer and co-host of the NBA podcast, Bryan Toporek. Comes up at 1:20 p.m. today. Thanks again to Kayla Harrison for joining the show a little bit earlier. If you missed our conversation, it'll be up on the YouTube channel this afternoon at 973 ESPN on YouTube. We're going to get back to the Eagles and Phillies talk right now. By the way, a little news on the Colts front. So I haven't seen an official announcement of what's going on with Carson Wentz's foot. What I have seen is the Colts have brought in another quarterback, Brett Hundley, the former Packers enigma, who was a bust for the Packers, major bust in Green Bay. They brought him in. So apparently they need enough quarterbacks at least for the preseason, because he is not the guy you want starting an NFL season. Holy cow. Brett Hundley's got a bad NFL record. So I think we can confirm that Carson Wentz is not going to play this preseason. I think the Brett Hundley move proves that. So we can at least confirm that it looks like more and more that Wentz is going to continue to be out indefinitely. So that's the latest with the Carson Wentz front. Obviously, we care because if Carson Wentz plays a minimum of 75 games this year, or if he plays 70 games and the Colts make the playoffs, the Eagles get a first-round pick. Any other scenario less than those numbers, the Eagles get a second-round pick. So that's why we're keeping tabs on the Wentz situation, because it determines if the Eagles get a first, second-round pick, and they have 3 first-round picks next year. I'm telling you guys right now, if I'm the Eagles, I take those picks, I trade up to the top of the draft, and I pick Kayvon Thibodeau of Oregon, because he's the next freak coming out of college. And you can be a freak defensive end like Chase Young coming off that edge. Can you imagine how much better the Eagles defense would be even next year with a freak like that coming off the edge? Woo! Gotta love that. So, gotta keep an eye on that. We are going to get into the Phillies, though, a little bit, because the Phillies did make trades yesterday, and last night's game proved why you had to make that trade. Because Vince Velasquez imploded last night. Another game that Velasquez... The Pirates are one of the worst teams in all of baseball. And everybody's least favorite pitcher, Vinny Velo, just couldn't do anything right last night. And it's more than the fact he gave up 5 runs. Vince Velasquez is supposed to be a strikeout pitcher. He had 1 strikeout on the whole outing. 5 earned runs in 2 innings. 5 runs in 2 innings. Velasquez is just falling apart. And then they bring in Chase Anderson to clean up the mess. 4 innings gone. He had 5 Ks. And so Anderson had more strikeouts than Velasquez had innings last night. That's ridiculous. This only proves why you had to make the trade for Kyle Gibson. Because Vince Velasquez has now given up 5 runs or more in 4 of his last 5 starts. He has pitched horribly in the month of July. And I think the Vince Velasquez experiment needs to be canned. We've been saying it needs to be canned for a while, but this only proves the point. It's done. The Velasquez experiment is done. I am out on Vince Velasquez. And I've been out on him for a while. And so you had to make the Kyle Gibson trade yesterday because you had to get starting pitching. You had to get another arm on this team. And if I'm the Phillies, I'm on the phone right now with Cole Hamels begging him to sign with me. Because even though I know he won't be ready to come to the majors until probably the end of August, the early September, at least I know a pitcher's coming. This Zach Eflin situation is a complete unknown. We have no idea when Eflin is coming back. We thought he was going to come back this week. He had a setback. They pushed him off another week. Chase Anderson has proven that he's better out of the bullpen than he is as a starter. And at this point, even Velasquez can't even just be an opener. Spencer Howard is at least able to be an opener. Get you through a couple innings. Velasquez now can't even get through innings. As I said, Vince Velasquez has now given up so many runs. 5 runs or more in 4 of his last 5 starts. He has 1 start this month where he pitched well. And even that's subjective because he had 4 strikeouts and 2 walks in 5 innings. And he gave up no runs. It's not even a Velasquez outing. You know, back in May and June, he at least looked serviceable. Like he looked like, all right, well, maybe Velasquez, we can trust him just enough to get us by. But the expiration date is hit on that getting you by. The milk is soured, and I'm done with Velasquez. So you had to trade for Gibson. You had to do it. Because you need an arm who's not going to implode like Velasquez has this month. Not that Matt Moore is any better. I mean, Matt Moore has given up 6 runs or more in 2 straight starts. That's poor too. So realistically, it doesn't really matter if we're talking about Moore or we're talking about Velasquez. They both need to go. But I think Velasquez more than Moore does, because at least with Velasquez, we can point to and be like, he has an entire month of bad pitching. At least with Matt Moore, his 2 appearances before his last 2 games, he pitched way better. Before the last 2 games, Moore gave up a combined 6 earned runs over 3 starts. And in those 3 starts, he went 4 innings minimum each. And he averaged in those 3 starts at least 4 strikeouts to start. So he's averaging about a strikeout per inning over 3 starts. It's not bad. It's not great, but it's not bad. At least Moore can be serviceable. On the flip side, Velasquez is completely imploded. So you had to get Gibson. And if you want to complain about them giving up too much or too little or whatever, listen, you look at the report that came out yesterday from ESPN. So Kylie McDaniel, and it was a report that was corroborated by Buster Olney and Jeff Passan last night on SportsCenter. They all were reporting that everybody was demanding too much. They were asking the highest price possible in every trade. So the Phillies were never going to be able to get Max Scherzer, Jose Barrios. They were never going to be able to get any of those top-tier pitchers because those teams were asking a premium. The Dodgers gave up their 2 best prospects to get Scherzer and Trey Turner yesterday. And the Phillies have already come out and said they were never going to give up Abel and they were never going to give up Bryson Stott. So the Phillies drew the line and said they weren't going to make that deal. But what they did do is they gave up Kevin Gowdy, who has been basically a bust of a second-round pick in the minors. The dude has an over 4 ERA every year in the minor leagues. They gave up an international signee who they didn't even draft from Australia. And they gave up Spencer Howard. And listen, Spencer Howard could end up being the closer for the Rangers and have a nice career. So good for him. and you got a guy in Kyle Gibson who's under control for one more year, and a guy in Ian Anderson who just had 30 saves back in 2019. And he's 16 for 17 this year. So I think you came out good with that trade because you didn't give up a ton to get those guys. And by the way, you also got the Rangers' number 7 prospect according to MLB.com pipeline. So according to MLB.com minor league rankings, they got a very good minor leaguer out of that deal. And for those who don't know, if you go to 973ESPN.com, we have the full breakdown of what the trade is and how it worked and how it played out. But Hans Kraus, the Rangers' number 7 ranked prospect according to MLB.com, the analysis of him is that there are some evaluators who believe he's a starter and some evaluators who believe he's a closer. But either way, he has plus stuff. That he has a fastball that gets to 99 and a wipeout slider. It's mid-80s. So you actually improved your minor league system and got a starting pitcher for now and a closer for right now. So I think the Phillies did good on the trade deadline. And then getting Freddie Galvis. Galvis has a better batting average, a better on-base percentage, a better slugging percentage than Didi Gregorius this year. And he has 7 less errors than Gregorius this year. 7 or 8. I got to double check the number. But the point is that he's a better fielder and he's a better hitter right now than Didi is. And you need that help. So I think overall the Phillies, they satiated me. They gave me what I needed. Get some of your messages over here. Text board is open as always. 609-403-0973 is the text board. 609-403-0973. We're also live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Join the conversation there. Also, you can send us messages right from the 973 ESPN mobile app. Download it for free from the Google Play Store and the Apple Store. Thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. You can get all your updates on the Phillies, Eagles, Sixers, and Flyers right there with the 973 ESPN mobile app. And, of course, you can message the show as well, thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. Get some of your messages right now. James says, please designate for assignment Vinny Velo. Hey, man, wish I could. But I think you're stuck with him for a while. This organization, for whatever reason, there's something about him that we don't know. I don't know if he's a great practice guy. I don't know if he's a guy that has shown some growth and development since he since he was drafted. I don't know. I'm having trouble figuring out why they keep him, but for some reason they are. Steven chimes in and says, hey, Josh, love your show. Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate that. So after seeing last night why Vinny V is still here, I hope Gibson can continue his hot start he's having. Why not put De Los Santos in and call up Medina? Also, Steve goes on to say, anyone is better than Vince Velasquez or even sign Hamels. With adding Kennedy, can move Suarez back to the rotation because Dominguez is back in September. Yeah, this is what I would do if I'm the Phillies, Steven. What I would do is I would sign Hamels and then basically have a plan that both Hamels and Dominguez will join the team in September. And that way, for the stretch run of September, you have those two covered. And then when it comes to the starting situation, my only reason why I'm not running to put a guy like Suarez or a De Los Santos as an opening starter is because I'm just conflicted. I'm conflicted on what they can do because Suarez is actually, I think he has shown you that he could be a very good bullpen pitcher. And I'm just not sure if now is the time to shake him back and forth between starting and being in the bullpen. I'm just not sure now is the time to do that. I know he has starting experience at the minors and the big league level. I know that the most recent starting action that he had was, I got to double check, I think it was 2018. 22 with the Phillies. Yeah, he started 3 games with the Phillies, 5.4 ERA. He was 22 back then in the minors. His minor league career, he has a good numbers, okay? He's had 82 starts. He's pitched well in those situations. So, maybe you give him a try. I wouldn't be against it. I'm just worried that you don't want him waffling back and forth between starting bullpen. The guy's only 25 years old. He turns 26 next month. You got to make a decision, and you don't want to mess with him too much. That's just my opinion. I think that when you look at Suarez, I think Suarez is a guy that you got to make a decision of what his role is going to be moving forward. And that's kind of how I stand on him. So, but Phillies got to do something because the Velasquez era needs to be done. And that's why they traded for Gibson. All right, we're going to switch over to the Sixers and the NBA coming up next. Bryan Toporek from the NBA podcast, Forbes Sports NBA writer will join us. Why has Ben Simmons not been traded? Chuck Fletcher's made trades. Dombrowski has made trades. Morey, he's trading draft picks. Yeah, not thrilled. Bryan Toporek, we'll talk about that coming up next right here on Sports Bash Saturday. Josh Hennig here on 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app, powered by First Bank of Seattle City. And we're live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Join the conversation here on 97.3 ESPN FM.
This weekend on Major League Baseball on ESPN Radio. The fight for the top of the AL East continues when the Red Sox head to Tropicana Field to face the Rays.
Gone! Right on cue in opposite field. 3-run homer for Brandon Lau.
The Red Sox and Rays. Coverage begins today at 5:30 Eastern and tomorrow at 6 Eastern. Listen to Major League Baseball on 97.3 ESPN.
season is about to kick off, and that means it's time to list your football future bets on PropSwap. Did you know before the season started last year, the Buccaneers were 60-1 to win it all? Now that's a futures bet. You just never know what can happen. Or hey, maybe you do. Sports bettors cash in early and often when they list long shots on PropSwap. The average monthly seller makes $500 a month on PropSwap just posting and selling tickets. So join them by going to PropSwap.com or download the PropSwap app today. PropSwap, where America buys and sells sports bets.
This is Sports Bash Saturday with Josh Hennig, live from the Matt Blatt Kia Studios. Here's Josh Hennig.
Josh Hennig here, 97.3 ESPN FM, 97.3 ESPN mobile app. We are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. We'll get back to all your guys' thoughts and comments in just a bit. Text board is open as always, 609-403-0973. Also, you can message the show to 97.3 ESPN mobile app. Thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. And joining us right now as you watch the show on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, he is the co-host of the NBA podcast, also Forbes Sports NBA writer. Bryan Toporek joins us right now on 97.3 ESPN. Bryan, how you doing today?
I'm doing well, Josh. How are you?
Is that a fresh haircut I see?
It sure is. Yeah, I had to get it before the draft, before free agency, new year, new me. Got to go.
New year, new you. Well, the good thing with the draft is I feel like this is not a diminishment of the wonderful night it was for all those young men and their families. But I feel like the biggest story of the draft wasn't actually anyone who was drafted per se. It was the fact that we had some level of normalcy. We actually had a draft. We actually had nothing virtual, none of that stuff we had to deal with last year. So to me, when Adam Silver said, it's so nice to see you people out here, like I kind of felt that, Bryan, because there's a part of you that's like, now that we've been able to see people like in person in recent months, there's a part of you that's like, wow, this is what it's really about. Like, it's not as much about specifically who drafted who, because that all kind of irons out in the end, right? It's the fact that we had some sort of normalcy with draft night.
Yeah, I mean, I hope it's not short-lived, knock on wood, but I thought you were going to say the biggest story of draft night wasn't the draftees, but what the Lakers did, because that was
that's
and the Woj and Shams battle that happened a couple hours before the draft started. But that I think if you're looking ahead to next year specifically, because most of the top prospects went to teams that are not even remotely close to championship contention. Like, if you're looking for what's the biggest story for next year, it was the Lakers acquiring Russell Westbrook.
Absolutely. And I think that what's interesting with the Lakers acquiring Russell Westbrook is that means they only have 4 guys under contract.
Yeah.
So this is like LeBron Miami deja vu, where they literally had 4 or 5 guys under contract heading into each offseason. They had to finagle the cap. So Rob Pelinka is going to have to get really creative here, because I mean, I like the Russell Westbrook addition for the Lakers because, let's be realistic, Anthony Davis can't stay healthy and LeBron's getting older. So why not get a guy in there who basically is a workhorse to be out there on the court? But the problem is, who's he passing to?
Yeah, I'll be honest, I do not like the move whatsoever, especially given the rumors that were, I think it was Woj who said they were nearing, and Mark Stein of Substack, they were talking with Sacramento about a Buddy Hield acquisition. And that, I think, given that they would have to give up less to get Hield, and that he fits conceptually a little better in terms of, ideally, like, you pair LeBron and AD with just shooting. You just put a bunch of shooters around them and let LeBron be the point guard and pass to these guys. Russ, I agree. In the regular season, it could reduce the wear and tear on LeBron and AD, but he's such a historically bad shooter that once you get to the playoffs, every time teams are just going to go under screens on him. They're not going to respect him at all. So it might give them a higher floor during the regular season, but right now I think they have a lower ceiling than they would have with a Hield move. As you said, we'll see what happens in free agency. There's already some rumblings that, some guys might take less than they otherwise might expect to go join the Lakers and go pursue a championship with these guys. And if that's the case, like, if we look back in a week and they've added, Reggie Bullock and Alec Burks and DeMar DeRozan on the mid-level exception, Otto Porter on a minimal contract, like, there are ways that they can build out this roster around these guys and still be the title favorites that we thought they were last year. But right now, before free agency, after the draft, just knowing their roster is so barren, I do not feel very good about where the Lakers are.
So you mentioned free agency. What is free agency like this year? Because I feel like all of us are just kind of borderline overwhelmed right now in the sports world, which is the baseball trade deadline is this week. The NHL had their free agency this week. The NBA free agency is next week. The draft comes a week after the NBA finals at the same time of all the NFL reporting to camp. Like, for a regular sports fan, this is like the opposite of last year. Last year we had no sports for a while. Now it's sports overload, on top of everything else going on in the world. So, by the way, the Olympics are on TV. I saw a girl.
I was going to say.
I turned around. I saw a girl. She almost missed the board on the dive. So, like, I'm just like, oh my goodness. Like, I'm watching the commercial break. I looked over. I'm like, did I just see that on live television? But anyway, so talk to everybody out there about what is free agency like this year for the NBA. Who are the legitimate guys to keep an eye on, and for lack of a better term, should they care about free agency?
Yeah, so I think, a year or two ago, you project ahead for a couple of years for free agency every year, and teams start building they're building long-term plans, seeing like, okay, all of these guys could be up at the same time. So a couple of years ago, it was like Giannis could be up for a new deal. LeBron could be up for a new deal. Paul George, Rudy Gobert, a couple like Jason Tatum, Bam Adebayo. All of those guys have signed extensions. So the top of the free agent class isn't nearly as strong as what we thought it was going to be. Kawhi Leonard is the number one prize on the market, but there have been no rumblings that he wants to leave the Clippers, and he's recovering from this partial ACL tear. So, I think he's going to get whatever contract he wants. I think Kevin Durant was proof of that a couple of years ago when the Nets still gave him a 4-year max off of an Achilles injury. Kawhi's injury, by all accounts, is not nearly as severe. So if Kawhi wants a 5-year max with the Clippers, I think he'll get it. Chris Paul is the other big name to keep an eye on. He has a $44.2 million player option. There's still no word yet if he's going to decline it, but it seems the wide assumption is that he is going to. Again, I don't see why he would leave the Phoenix Suns fresh off of that run to the finals. But if a team comes way over the top, like if the Suns aren't willing to offer him more than $60 million and someone else says, here's 120, that might get him to think twice. And then, otherwise, beyond Chris Paul, point guards are the strength of this free agent class. So you have Kyle Lowry, who's up, been discussed a ton with relation to the Sixers in particular. Mike Conley, Lonzo Ball, Spencer Dinwiddie, Dennis Schroeder. You have a couple of guys like Goran Dragic, Patty Mills, Derrick Rose, Devontae Graham. So it's like tiers of players, but just a ton of point guards on the market. And then other than that, it's mostly, like some run-of-the-mill, like 30-year-old DeMar DeRozan. Danny Green's a free agent who will be of interest to the Sixers again. Evan Fournier. No one like super, you bring this guy in and like Evan Fournier is not going to turn you into a title contender overnight, but we saw with the Hawks last year, if you sign a couple of those guys, maybe you can take a big step forward. So those are the big names. Not a ton of teams have cap space. It's like the Knicks, the Spurs, the Thunder can. The Mavericks are going to have around 30 million. The Pelicans can get up to 36. It sounds like a lot of these teams are lining up bids for Kyle Lowry in particular. So I think that is probably, Monday, 6 p.m. is when you can officially start negotiating with free agents. I think Lowry is the number one name to monitor when the clock strikes 6 to see, does he agree to a deal right away, or does he set the series of dominoes in motion?
Well, I think some of those dominoes could potentially impact the Sixers, because I'm assuming, and again, I'm assuming because I don't know for sure, obviously, I'm not Daryl Morey, but I'm assuming Simmons didn't get traded on draft night because the Sixers are banking on the fact that not every team's going to get all those point guards you mentioned. And as the market plays out, they'll be able to get involved in the market in some way. And as you mentioned, the Sixers would love to have Kyle Lowry. And at this point, I'm assuming that if you're going to get Kyle Lowry, you're trading Ben Simmons in some sort of sign and trade deal just because of the way the numbers work. And that's the only reason why, Bryan, I can go with Ben Simmons hasn't been traded, because the free agent market is full of point guards. Because to me, And I have to agree with the other people who said this, because a lot of people on ESPN TV this week said, well, it makes sense if the Sixers trade him on draft night because you can get picks involved and it's easier to move assets around that way, for certain teams who might be interested. So I was thinking, all right, well, maybe there'll be a trade. And when you saw the Westbrook trade, you're like, okay, I saw one trade. Let's go Ben Simmons. And it went around all night and nothing happens. And then Moore gets asked about it. He's like, oh, I'm not talking about that. It's like, thanks, Daryl. Thanks.
Yeah, I didn't expect it to happen on draft night. I've been this entire offseason, I've been saying I don't even know if it happens at all this offseason. I think I've been less bullish on there is urgency right now to do this deal than a lot of other people in the Sixers Twitter space and who've been writing about the team. So yeah, I think it makes more sense to wait for free agency. You can't do a sign and trade with Kyle Lowry before that thing starts. And right now the draft is before free agency. So they couldn't have agreed to a Kyle Lowry centric deal on draft night just because that's not allowed. You're totally right. If they do a sign and trade with Kyle Lowry, one of Ben or Tobias almost has to go out. It's basically impossible to make the numbers work otherwise, just because they can't go over a certain threshold of money, about 143 million. So that is something to keep in mind as well. Is there a 2-team deal with Lowry and Scotty Barnes, the new number 4 pick, going to the Sixers for Ben Simmons? Is it a 3-team deal where Simmons goes elsewhere, Lowry comes here, and that, I don't know what the mechanics are. We've been hearing a ton of leaks about, what Daryl has been asking for. Like Golden State, he wanted the 7-14 Wiggins Wiseman, but he also wanted 2 first-round picks. That was from Keith Pompey of the Philadelphia Inquirer. Kevin O'Connor of The Ringer said, they wanted every pick under the sun from the Spurs. And that honestly tells me that Daryl is just probing the market right now, and he's setting outrageous prices. The way I keep making this analogy is if you play fantasy football, there's always one owner out there who's just sending you Duke Johnson for Christian McCaffrey. And you're just praying that someone's asleep at the wheel and it hits accept. So, if someone's willing to do this absurd package for Ben Simmons, that's great. But I think he really still wants to wait out and see what happens with Bradley Beal and Damian Lillard in particular. Beal, it sounds like, is happy about this Russ Westbrook trade. And I think the Wizards, as much as I dislike that deal for the Lakers, I actually like it a lot for the Wizards because it gives them more long-term flexibility. And I think they also just make more sense short-term. They need a point guard still, but Jake Fisher of Bleacher Report has been saying that a sign and trade with Spencer Dinwiddie seems to be in the works there. So that, I think that Wizards team is going to make a lot more sense on paper than it did last week. Dame, we don't know what is happening still. We'll see what Portland does, if they can re-sign Norman Powell in free agency, if they trade CJ McCollum somewhere. Jake mentioned a possible McCollum for Pascal Siakam swap has been discussed. So, if Portland can't make the moves that satisfy Dame, does he request a trade in a month or two? And this is what I keep coming back to with Ben, is that you don't want to take 50 cents on the dollar right now if you think there's a chance that Damian Lillard becomes available in 3 months, because that, Ben alone is not going to get you Damian Lillard. But if you package Ben with, picks, some of these young guys on the roster, that can probably at least get you in the door.
Bryan Toporek joining us here on Sports Bash Saturday, 97.3 ESPN FM, at Toporek on Twitter. You can check out the NBA podcast, download on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, wherever you listen to your podcast. Subscribe, download. Also writes for Forbes Sports NBA contributor. Now, if I can play devil's advocate with the Damian Lillard thing, because I'm on the Damian Lillard, he's not getting traded this offseason train. I think that Portland's going to find a way to satiate him. And my question then is, if you wait around for what may never happen and you miss out on another opportunity, you're still stuck in the same boat. Is it worth being stuck in the same boat because you waited for Lillard and it never happened? Or is it better off just saying, look, we'll take Kyle Lowry, we'll take whoever else comes in a 3-way deal, and moving forward with those guys?
Yeah, I think that's the question that Daryl has to weigh. Are you willing to risk being left with Ben Simmons? If Dame doesn't become available, if Beal doesn't become available, these chairs are all going to move around in the next week or two. And after that, these big trades might not be available. So you have to basically decide what is, the lowest threshold that you're willing to accept right now, and accept the risk that if you take this, that might take you out of the running for Dame, and it might take you out of the running for Beal. But, the packages that were being discussed before the draft didn't really make sense for where the Sixers are as a team. That, why do the Sixers want James Wiseman when they have Joel Embiid? Those types of packages, seem to imply that they would be trading Ben for assets that they would then immediately offload in one of these superstar trades. So, I think the question really is, are you willing to go into next season with Ben Simmons on your roster? If you are, then you're willing to wait out a Beal possible trade, a Dame possible trade, maybe Zach LaVine from Chicago. Then you can have a little bit more time to, wait this thing out. If you say there is no going back by training camp, we absolutely need Ben Simmons off the roster, you're going to have to lower your asking price. Because you're right. There's no guarantee that Beal or Dame get moved this offseason. I think it's more likely than not that they don't. I think both of those guys are going to go into next season, and maybe then if things fall apart, that's moved, or next offseason for Dame in particular. So that's why you hire someone like Daryl Morey, because it's a really tough decision to make, and I'm sure he's going to be on the phone all weekend trying to figure out what's best for this team, and what's the best offer he can get now versus what's the intel coming out of Washington and Portland about, are these guys going to become available anytime soon?
Big picture question about the league this offseason. What is the impact of the Bucks winning the championship on this offseason? Because, I had Miran Fader on last week, talking about her book about Giannis, and her and I were talking about the fact that, Giannis winning a championship changes the perception for fans, for example, of to me, I believe there should be an Antetokounmpo jersey on everyone's back right now. Everybody, you talk about you missed old school basketball, right? You should be a fan of Giannis. There should be a million Giannis jerseys sold. Everybody should love this guy. But what is the impact on the league, Brian? What is the impact around the league saying, hey, this guy stayed in Milwaukee. Milwaukee made the difficult trades this offseason. They bit the bullet and kept the coach. They did everything, and they wound up with a championship. So what is the impact on the league this offseason?
Yeah, I think that's, if you're Washington and Portland, that's probably the hope. You point to Giannis and tell Bradley Beal, hey, he stayed and won, and look at how rewarding it was for him. Or tell Dame the same thing. So all of these small market teams with superstars, even New Orleans, where we're already hearing reports that Zion and members of his family might not be happy. All of these places are going to tell their superstars, look, you can go chase the easy way, go form a super team. That's your choice. But it's, if you work and work and work and build your way up, and, the community is going to love you forever. There's going to be a Chris Middleton statue and a Bobby Portis statue outside of somewhere in Milwaukee, just because those guys were so important to that title run. So what's the impact? I don't think that Beal or Dame is looking at that and is saying, oh, well, if he can do it, I can. Because Milwaukee, they fell short in the playoffs for the last couple of years, but they had the best record in the league, not this year, but the 2 prior years. So it's they were a title contender for the last 3 years, and they finally just broke through this year. Washington was barely a playoff team this year. Portland, made it to the Western Conference Finals 2 years ago, has gotten knocked out in the first round in the 2 years since, lost to a very badly injured Denver Nuggets team this year. So I think, you can tell these guys, look, it's rewarding to win where you're drafted and the community is going to love you. But at the same time, the front office, the ownership has to actually do a good job and build well around these guys. Because after a certain point, when you're in a small market and you're not a major free agent destination, if you make too many mistakes, then there is a point of no return where it makes sense that you're not going to ever get to that title contender status. So you might have to think about trading your stars before it is too late. And I think Portland is in a really interesting spot this offseason because they have so many guys on expiring contracts where this would be the natural pivot point. Like if you're going to trade Dame, this is the best offseason to do it because you're risking losing a lot of free agents out the door next summer, and he still might request a trade. But we'll see what happens. I would be surprised if those guys are looking at Giannis and they're like, oh, okay, well now we're happy in our markets because Portland and Washington are in very different spots roster-wise than where Milwaukee was even prior to this season.
He's Bryan Toporek. Give him a follow on Twitter at @Toporek. Of course, he's the co-host of the NBA podcast. Download, subscribe, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, wherever else. I mean, I feel like there's like 20 podcast platforms now.
Yeah.
But obviously, you can get them on all the platforms. Also, check out his work over on Forbes Sports. And he joined us here on the live stream on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter with a fresh haircut. So Bryan is ready for the NBA offseason visually and mentally here as we get ready. Next week is when it all starts going down. And, of course, Bryan will join us again in the near future to recap the latest and greatest. Bryan, always appreciate you jumping on. Enjoy the weekend and get some sleep. Hydrate because you're going to need it for next week.
I'm trying to. I will say I've got a Sixers free agent preview coming out tomorrow on Forbes, so check that out if you're interested. Lots of taxpayer mid-level minimum signing guys that they should be going after.
So basically all the technical stuff people need to know about before they throw out their harebrained ideas on Twitter.
Yep, that's the hope. Yep.
Great stuff, Bryan. We'll check it out tomorrow. Thanks, man.
Cool. Thank you.
Josh Hennig here, Sports Bash Saturday, 97.3 ESPN. One more segment to go. We'll wrap it up with your guys' thoughts and comments next. Text board is open, 609-403-0973. 97.3 ESPN mobile app, powered by First Bank of Seattle City. You can chime in through the app. And we are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. You comment on the stream as well. I'm Josh Hennig. One more segment next.
Coming up on the next edition of the Sports Bash with Mike Gill.
Coming up on Monday, busy weekend for the Phils against the Pirates after the trade deadline. We'll discuss with Bob Blanco. Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City talks all things Philly sports. Plus, Jeff Mosher has football at 4 as the Eagles are back at camp, and Jeff Kerr on the Eagles and the NFL.
The Sports Bash, weekdays from 2 to 6 on 97.3 ESPN, South Jersey's sports leader.
New Jersey, this is not a test. If you're looking for a deal on a new vehicle, get to Matt Blatt Nissan and get $2,500 off on every new 2021 Nissan Murano SUV in stock.
Oh, yeah, it's on at Matt Blatt Nissan.
Yes, get $2,500 off every new 2021 Nissan Murano in stock. Drive it today with 0 down and pay 0 interest for 60 months. Plus, Matt Blatt Nissan will buy your current vehicle for cash or trade it for top dollar. What do you get? $2,500 off. 0 money down, 0% interest on every 2021 Nissan Murano in stock. And don't forget our fast track checkout. So bring any vehicle and Matt Blatt Nissan will buy it for cash or pay top dollar for any trade in Egg Harbor Township next to Home Depot or online at mattblattnissan.com. Negative equity will be refinanced into new vehicle. Rate qualifications exist. Not all will qualify. 0% APR financing based on 1667 per thousand borrowed. Offers can't be combined. Call 877-289-6670 or go to mattblattnissan.com for complete details. Offer ends 8/6/21. It's on at Matt Blatt Nissan on the Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township.
New Jersey Secretary of Agriculture Doug Fisher here, reminding you that Jersey Fresh eggplant is great, fried, baked, or grilled. So many wonderful varieties and colors are available. Be sure to pick up Jersey Fresh eggplant at your favorite farm market or supermarket. Stay loyal to local Jersey Fresh.
This is Sports Bash Saturday with Josh Hennig, live from the Matt Blatt Kia Studios. Here's Josh Hennig.
Josh Hennig here on 97.3 ESPN FM. You can watch the show live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. We're also live on the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. Download for free from the Apple Play Store, Google Play. Thanks, First Bank of Sea Isle City. Player Phillies, Eagles, Flyers. Every sport, Philadelphia, as well as South Jersey High School sports right there on the 97.3 ESPN mobile app, powered by First Bank of Sea Isle City. Couple more of your messages before we get out of here. Appreciate everybody who chimed in. Also, thanks again to Bryan Toporek for joining the show, as well as Kayla Harrison. A lot of great stuff today. We covered a lot of bases all over the place today here on 97.3 ESPN. Shout out to Jeff Bonampuki, who says, either way, Eagles are still winning off the Wentz trade. I mean, yeah, in theory, they still are because they're not dealing with the damaged goods anymore. It's somebody else's problem now, kind of thing. You know what I mean? It's not your problem anymore. It's somebody else's problem, kind of thing. So I definitely think there is that element to it, and I think that's completely and totally fair. So, and listen, it's looking more and more that at least Wentz will not play in the preseason because they brought in Brett Huntley. So the idea is that, you know, you have a situation where, you know, this guy is probably going to have to either get some surgery, whether it's minimal or not, and we'll wait to see what the reports are, but hopefully he can still play this year because you want the first round pick. But if not, at least you dumped the damaged goods on somebody else. So, Jeff, you're right. Technically, the Eagles are still winning. Another message came in a little bit earlier in the show. We talked about the Phillies today as well. Phillies making 2 trades for the deadline yesterday. Text message came in and says, Phillies, I guess, had no choice but to include Spencer Howard, but they should have tried to make moves a few weeks ago, see if we could have got a pitcher for less. We waited too long and lost games that maybe we could have won if you would have had adequate pitching. Listen, I agree with that. I think that I was screaming for the rooftops for 2 weeks. They had to make pitching changes. And I agree with 100%. If they would have made some deals sooner, maybe they don't lose the Pirates game last night. Maybe they don't split the Nationals and the Giants series. Instead of going 500 in both series, maybe you would have won 3 out of 4 in both series. And in that situation, you would have been 1 game or 2 games closer to the Mets, let's say. I think that you're right. They waited a long time. They were trying to wait to the last minute to make a deal. Not a fan of that. But at least they did make a deal, and I think that in and of itself is a positive. So that's kind of my take on it. You know, I think I like the deal. I agree with you. I don't think they waited so long to get the deal, but I think it's still a positive. So that's kind of my perspective on the whole, you know, at least the logistics and the timing of it. So, like I said, I'm on board with Kyle Gibson and Ian Kennedy coming here. I'm on board with Freddie Galvis. I think they were good deals overall. I don't know if it helps you win the division, but I think it helps you stop losing as many games. I think that's safe to say. So, of course, Phillies are back in action today versus the Pirates. Of course, for all your Phillies news and updates, keep it tuned to 973ESPN.com and the 973 ESPN mobile app. Someone did ask about, are there any updates on the COVID list situation? The latest update we had was yesterday because, you know, they made some corresponding moves because of the trades and because of a couple other things. I know that Andrew Knapp is on the paternity list. That's why Marchand got called up. I know that J.D. Hammer was acted off to the COVID list. He was playing last night. Also, the Phillies have reinstated Travis Jankowski from the COVID list. Matt Joyce has been moved to the 60-day DL, and they've designated Brandon Kinsler for assignment. So no news on Bradley Falter yet, but we know on those other guys. So a Couple hot things I want to hit on before we get out of here. You know I'm a huge UFC guy. I talked with Kayla Harrison a little bit early in the show. Amanda Nunes, the current GOAT of women's MMA, supposed to defend her belt next Saturday, will not fight. And the reason I bring this up is because the reason why she's not fighting is going to present a whole new problem moving forward for sports. So Amanda Nunes will not defend her belt next Saturday because she tested positive for COVID. But she has no symptoms. She has no issues. She says she feels perfectly fine. And the UFC is going to try to reschedule her fight with Juliana Pena to defend her belt in the near future. We're not 100% what that date will be yet, but we know they're working on rescheduling it. And the reason why I said we can keep an eye on for is because another person tested positive this week and has no symptoms, and that's Troy Polamalu. All right? Trey Turner tested positive for COVID, got pulled from the game the other day, no symptoms. And as we go through this situation where this, people keep saying, well, we have an increase of COVID cases, which are not COVID positives, by the way. They're COVID cases, read the fine print. We're not dealing with the same problems we dealt with last year. I ask you guys, at what point do we stop worrying about COVID positives and just let these athletes go out there and play? I understand we're worried about, well, at least some people are worried about not spreading the virus. Okay, they're worried about the variants. They're worried about people not spreading this virus around, even if they are just carriers. But at some point, if Michael Jordan was playing today, the flu game would have never happened because people are getting the sniffles and getting colds, and they're just not going to work right now because they got to go get a COVID test. And even if they don't have COVID, people are worried about, well, you might get COVID even if you are sick. So we got to figure out as a sports world what we're doing with this COVID stuff, because if people are not getting sick from COVID and they're only testing positive, they have no symptoms, and they're perfectly fine, what do we do about that? At some point, we got to cross that line from COVID concerns and protocols to moving on with the world. And I don't know what that line is. I don't know when that moment is, but I'm concerned that someone is going to miss NFL games this year or college football games because they tested positive for COVID and they have no symptoms. Just something to keep an eye on. Josh Hennig, Sports Bash Saturday. Have a great weekend. I'll catch you Monday on Game Night here on 97.3 ESPN FM.
When you support your local small businesses, it helps keep your neighbors employed, helps kids save for college, and strengthens your community. And Town Square Media South Jersey puts local businesses in the spotlight.
First Bank of Sea Isle City, Cape County's community bank.
Dr. Lyle M. Back for everything from skincare to cosmetic surgery. Go to ilovelylback.com.
Egg Harbor Independent Branch Leader at Charles Schwab in the Consumer Square Shopping Plaza.
Filling Marble and Tile Outlet, Philadelphia Avenue and Route 30 in Egg Harbor City. Visit fillingmarble.com.
Intuitive Women's Health in Summers Point, accepting new patients. Schedule an appointment today online at intuitivewomenshealth.net.
East Coast Roofing, Siding and Windows services all of South Jersey. If you call, they'll show up. Call East Coast today at 609-646-1444. Online at eastcoastroofing.com.
Thank you for supporting your local businesses. From Town Square Media South Jersey.